Hey there, and welcome to Jenni Murray Studios, where music and creativity come together in the most unexpected ways. My name is Jennifer, and today we're going to be learning our 4 stitches on the sewing machine that every beginner should know. That's going to be our straight stitch, back stitch, pivot stitch, and curve stitch. Honestly, each of these stitches actually deserve to have their own video on their own, but I'm going to walk you step by step on making sure that you're able to follow each stitch so that you can become a better and confident sewer. Are you ready? Well, let's get started. Whether you're just getting started or you are just now learning or teaching other little ones, then you are definitely in the right place. And guess what? Today we're not going to be using any fabric. We will be using actually copy paper or line paper, whichever you prefer. And of course, to do this activity, you do not necessarily have to do thread, but I will be demonstrating with thread to make sure that you can be able to see every step on what to do and how you're able to do it correctly. If you haven't yet learned how to wind your bobbin or how to thread your machine, then check out the links up here or in the description box below on how to do those two tutorials before you get started. Let's go over some supplies that you'll need for this activity today. Of course, you're going to need a sewing machine, a universal needle. I'm using an 80 by 12, a copy paper or any regular line paper, a pencil, a ruler, thread. Of course, thread is optional for you if you want to use it or not. A wounded bobbin, scissors, and last but not least is my free printable that is going to be in the description box below. This is through Canva. All you have to do is go click on the link or copy and paste it into your web browser, and it should go directly for you to be able to view that document so that you can print it and then follow along with us. I'm going to be using this tutorial and that printable because it's going to be very helpful and it's going to really help you to maximize learning how to do each of those 4 stitches. So I definitely encourage you to do that. But of course, you necessarily don't have to use the printable. You can definitely just do line paper and or copy paper and just draw in the same shapes that I'm actually going to be using on this video and do it that way. Whichever you prefer, I want to make sure that you have everything that you need so that you can go into these stitches the right and the strongest way. Before we start stitching, let's go ahead and look at a couple parts of the sewing machine that you're going to use throughout this whole video. Knowing these parts of the sewing machine will be able to help you to feel more confident and making sure you're on the straight and right path for your sewing journey. For the straight stitch, stitch selector, dial, or screen, we're going to make sure that your machine is set to the straight stitch, usually marked with a simple straight line. As you can see in my machine, I have straight stitch for stitches 2 through 7. I'm going to be using 2 because it's the shortest stitch, and that's going to be the easiest one for now as a beginner sewer that you're going to want to use. Presser foot. This holds your paper or fabric in place while you sew. You'll use your standard presser foot for all of today's stitches. For your back stitch, you're going to go ahead and look at your reverse lever or button. When you press it while sewing, your machine will stitch in reverse. We'll use it at the beginning and end of our stitches lines. On some machines, the reverse button must be held down while sewing backwards, so make sure you check yours. And of course, we're going to be using our presser foot lever. You'll use this to lift the presser foot while keeping the needle down, allowing you to turn your paper or fabric without losing your place. Speed control, if your machine of course has one. I have a speed control that goes up from 0 to 9, and this will help you to set your machine to a slower speed. Now that you know the key parts that you'll be using throughout this video, you'll be able to follow along with true confidence. Let's dive right into the straight stitch and practice on our paper. Again, I'm going to be using my own little printable to make sure that I can be able to help guide you, and so that you can also learn how to use one of these little PDFs for wherever you like to print them from. Step 1, straight stitch. What is a straight stitch? The straight stitch is the most basic and essential stitch in a sewing machine. It creates a line of evenly spaced stitches and is used for just over about anything: hemming, seaming, top stitching, and even quilting. Think of it as a foundation for all of your sewing essentials. Once you master your straight stitch, then you'll be well on your way to creating about anything that you want. Let's practice. To get started, you can use line paper or printed sewing sheets. If you're using plain copy paper, simply draw a few straight lines with a ruler to follow. Place your paper under the sewing machine just like you would with fabric, making sure your needle is positioned right on top of the line. You can just start by stitching directly on the line or train your eyes and hands to work together. Keep one hand gently guiding the side of the paper with your fingers safely on either side of the presser foot. This will help you stay steady and safe. Of course, go slow. It is not a race. It is not necessary for you to have to go fast, especially when you're doing your straight stitching. The faster you try to go, the harder it is for you to sometimes lock in and learning it correctly. So make sure you start out going slowly. As you get more comfortable, begin using the guidelines or margins on your sewing machine. I like to use the same paper and make sure I line up my margins with the paper or the line. You can either use the margins on the side of your sewing machine, or I like to use a line as a reference and just actually visually line up my paper and I'm sewing along the line and I'm visually following the line, not just right on the line sewing it. I'm actually visually following the line. Of course, practice makes progress. The more practice that you're able to put into this, the more time that you'll be able to learn and follow on to new, more confident and better projects. This is the stitch that sets the foundation for everything, and you're going to be using it throughout all the other 4 stitches. So make sure you take the time to practice again, process of it as slow as possible as you can. 2. What is a backstitch on a sewing machine? A backstitch is when you sew in reverse for a few stitches at the beginning and the end of your sewing line. Backstitching adds strength and durability to your seams. Without it, your stitches could easily unravel, especially with washing, wearing, or regular use. That's why it's important to build the habit early. In this step, we'll continue practicing straight stitching now with backstitching included. This will help you get comfortable securing the beginning and end of your seams with confidence. Here's how we do our back stitches. Start by sewing forward for about 3 to 5 stitches. We're going to go ahead and press the reverse lever button or your button on the sewing machine and then sew backward over that same stitch. You'll release the button and continue sewing forward along your seam line. When you reach the end of your seam, you're going to go ahead and repeat the back stitch by sewing 3 to 5 stitches forward and then 3 to 5 stitches backwards to lock the end of your stitches. Again, this is practicing your straight stitch, but now we're adding our back stitch, which is at the beginning and end of our seams. And that's it. You just locked in your stitches. Step 3, let's talk about the pivot stitch. What is a pivot stitch? A pivot stitch isn't a special type of stitch on your machine. It's a sewing technique used when you need to turn a corner while stitching. It helps you change the direction of your stitch without lifting the fabric completely off the machine. Instead of just stopping or starting again, you simply pivot your fabric while the needle stays down in the fabric, creating a clean, sharp turn like the right angle. This is especially helpful when sewing squares, rectangles, corners, or even zigzag patterns. How to do a pivot stitch. Start by using, as usual, a back stitch at the beginning of your seam. When beginning sewing forward along your line, just like you would with a straight stitch, slow down as you approach the corner. As you get closer to where your fabric needs to turn, which is usually about a 90 degrees angle, slow your sewing speed. Stop with the needle down. If you have to, then you can use the hand wheel and turn it forward towards you so that you can be able to make sure your needle is placed down. When your needle reaches the point where the fabric should turn, stop with the needle down in the fabric. This holds your spot and keeps your stitching aligned. Then continue to lift your presser foot while the needle stays in place. This frees the fabric so you can rotate it without losing your stitch position. Last, we'll lower the presser foot back down, then continue sewing in the new direction. When you reach the end of your seam, don't forget to backstitch to secure it again. Finally, lift your presser foot and cut the thread to finish. And that's it. You just did a pivot stitch in the most simple and beginner-friendly way. Step 4, curve stitches. What is a curved stitch? A curved stitch is when you guide your sewing machine to help follow rounded or arched lines instead of a straight line. This is especially useful when sewing things like necklines, armhole circles, skirts, plushies, or decorative designs. It helps your projects look smooth and natural rather than boxy and stiff. So you're still using both of your hands, but you're curving your fabric or your paper as you sew so that you can be able to create that really curved, smooth stitch. How to sew a curved stitch? We'll first start with a practice line. If you're using a printed sewing practice sheet or sewing your own, stitch out a gentle curve like a rainbow shape or the letter C. Start at one end of the curve as you would with a regular straight stitch. Backstitch to curve the beginning and the ends of your seam. Sew slowly and steadily. Curves require more control, so slow down your sewing speed. Don't rush, take your time to feel the rhythm. You'll use both hands to gently guide the paper or fabric along the curve. Your feed dogs will move the material forward, but your job is to steer the direction smoothly. As you follow the curve, use small, gentle turns to stay on the line. Avoid making sharp movements. Smooth and steady is the key. Just like driving, don't focus only on the needle. Look forward ahead on the curve so you can guide your fabric more smoothly. Once you reach the end of the curve, backstitch again to secure the seam. Then lift your presser foot and trim the thread. So as you can see in my demonstration, it's been a while since I've done a curve. So my recommendations and things that I thought about while I was re-practicing how to do a curve was, of course, going slowly. Make sure that your hands are actually positioned to where you're widening up, and start with a bigger circle so that you can be able to use both of your hands fully, and making sure that it goes through nice and smooth and slowly is the key. If you have to, you can practice doing it like a little pivot by keeping your presser foot down and your needle down, and then kind of pivot your paper. Lift your presser foot lever and then pivot your paper so that you can ever so slightly curve that way. If you have to do it piece by piece like that, that is possible too, but necessarily it's best to use both hands and go really slowly as you do your curve. And of course, relax. This is actually supposed to be a time where you're trying to get in tune with yourself and your sewing machine so that you can build that confidence. And that's a wrap. Today you learned your 4 essential beginner stitches: your straight stitch, back stitch, pivot stitch, and curve stitch. Of course, these are your 4 essential stitches that you're going to need and that every beginner sewer must and should know as a sewer. Remember, every time you practice, you are gaining more confidence between you and your sewing machine. So take the time, be patient, and enjoy the process. Don't forget to grab your free printable down there. These are 12 sheets of free printable just for you so that you can be able to be more confident in your sewing beginner journey. And if this video helped you, then please go ahead and give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend who you know is also doing their beginner sewing journey. Keep creating, and remember, every expert started exactly where you are right now. Until next time.